Welcome to a reading of the Maplesync kernel, a whitepaper sketchbook for a long-term COVID-19 economic response. Maplesync, a collaborative strategic economic planning platform for Canada, Inc. by Jeffrey C. Hill, BKI, and MDes candidate, co-founding author. This document, version 4.1 on 11th of June 2020, originally created 25th of May 2020 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. For more information about this project, visit the website and Twitter, or wiki, or GitHub, all linked in the description. This is part of the Purple Plenty movement, and it's the nucleus of a software upgrade to capitalism. Section 1, quote, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," a recurring conference theme of Rethinking Economics, New York City, New York. We know more than we can tell. Show, don't tell. Everything is a remix. A combination of quotes by Michael Polanyi, a Hungarian-British polymath, Anton Chekhov, a Russian author, and Kirby Ferguson, a Russian YouTuber. In memoriam, Dr. Glenda M. McQueen, 1965 to 2020. And acknowledgements. Thank you to my girlfriend and all my friends, classmates, teachers, and family, especially my Nana, who helped me iterate and refine this idea and document it. It would have been impossible to do without them. They will be acknowledged individually as they wish at a later point. In a way, Maplesync is a manifestation of the collective intelligence of my community and network as much as I may have crystallized it. Finally, we are all treaty people. Abstract. How might we make our common economic future more inclusive? How might we collectively indicate sustainable and inclusive pathways to prosperity? The purpose of this document, this kernel, is to communicate the basis, or kernel, a computer science term for the core of an operating system, or OS, for a distributed decision-making, open-source computing system. This system kernel is designed to encourage the creation of tools that encourage more efficient and effective macroeconomic coordination through a fusion of democratic deliberation by heuristically balancing the humors of collective intelligence, markets, communities, algorithms, democracies, and hierarchies. Maplesync, named for a classic case study in the transdiscipline of cybernetics but adapted to the Canadian context, will aggregate and confederate a system of systems of existing and new ideas towards an ideal of cohesiveness and interoperability. The reason for creating Maplesync is to increase prosperity equitably while respecting the hard boundaries of human needs and planetary limits. Maplesync platforms will include the voice of citizens in their common macroeconomic future by leveraging our collective intelligence. Many issues are to be sorted, but this document is intended to be the catalyst for massive change through the collaborative design of many clever minds. Simply put, Maplesync is Reddit for econ, a system to purposefully integrate knowledge from across an economy to address human needs, respect planetary boundaries, and co-create pathways to prosperity. This document, or kernel, gives technical specifications and next steps, as well as precedents, in that order, for the foundation of such a grand project. Key takeaways. There is an opportunity to increase Canadian prosperity through distributed decision-making. I believe that co-creating an open-source online community platform for strategic planning is the answer. Inclusiveness and accessibility allowing for information integrity is critical for the efficient and effective functioning of distributed decision-making for this platform. This project holds as its core that solving the economic calculation problem, or ECP, is critical for understanding how an economy functions and how it can function more effectively. Intended audience: social technologists, economists, funders, social innovation incubators, and accelerators. Contents. 1. Introduction, including mission, notes about economic theory, an overview of the project, and frequently asked questions. 2. Socio-Technical Specification, including the basic game plan, the technical systems, and diagrams, which you can view on the white paper on the website. And 3. Next steps, invitation to participate, conclusion and epilogue, as well as 4 foundational sources, including tools, bibliography, and a note about the author. Section 1, Introduction. Value is a process of valuing. John R. Commons, The Legal Foundations of Capitalism, 1924. Nowadays, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray, 1891. Maplesync's mission: to socially construct a digital space to disagree and reconcile about our big picture shared direction. 1.1 Introduction. charting a new course. Maplesync is the founding project in the emerging discipline of economic systems design, ESD. I define ESD as the study and practice about how markets interact and how information flows through a political economy. As a practical, participatory expression of that discipline, Maplesync is an internet-based information system and communications technology platform, or IICTP, focused on building strategic plans for Canada democratically. These indicative open-source strategic plans and open access strategic plans will help to identify a plurality of sub-strategies and missions to build a more competitive Canada that will encourage their implementation. The purpose is to contribute holistically to increasing our national wealth of all types. This unorthodox document is intended to demonstrate why Maplesync is an important improvement upon the markets and institutions we already have. If we think of Canada as Canada Inc., in other words, a very large firm or company, it is currently making some very irrational business decisions. For instance, there are immense barriers between interprovincial trade and a failure to utilize and capitalize on our own resources. Maplesync is a parallel and ideally influential manner to find solutions to these problems that are palatable to the majority and plurality of citizens and co-created by us. This project will include a large portion of Canada's brainpower to produce ideas and plan alternatives in support of individuals, families, communities, entrepreneurs, enterprises, and governments. For Canada to flourish in the 21st century, I believe we must be hewers of pixels and drawers of data, alongside being hewers of wood and drawers of water. We need to build a thoughtful and inclusive new nervous system for our economy. As an open source project, the platform we build here in Canada will be able to be replicated for local contexts around the world. To build this platform, Maplesync participants will aggregate and integrate digital tools made around the world that address the ecosystem of problems that Maplesync points to, while also making them accessible for further global iterative tinkering. It is an economic development project of grand proportions to make the most of the internet and web age with respect to macroeconomic decision making. Feedback is welcome and needed. Onward. Jeff C. F. Hill. Management is far too important to be left to the managers. Dr. Paul S. Adler, University of Southern California, Marshall Business School, in his 2019 book, The 99% Economy. The future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. William K. Gibson, science fiction author, quoted on National Public Radio, NPR, in 1993. 1.2. Grand Vision and Inspiration. Maplesyncs could be the operating systems for the new economy. Let me go Carl Sagan for a minute. I believe that the future of humanity relies on new forms of information management and decision-making structures to allow us to grow into increasingly larger forms of organization. We need a grand challenge to collect and coordinate a diverse effort towards this noble goal. Why? We started in families and tribes in the savannah. We built villages, then towns, then cities, then civilizations. We had to decide, fundamentally, the eternal question of who gets what, why, how, and when. This is a paradigm to iterate and explore answers to the question on a massive but ultimately practicable scale. It is about creating a digital artifact to thrust our understanding forward. This is Maplesync. The indigenous peoples of the prairies of southwestern Alberta, Canada, used what is now the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump, pictured in the report, as one of their holistic sources of economic flourishing. I imagine, as evidence suggests, they planned the logistics and strategy of these massive buffalo jumps together around the campfire. Our descendants amongst the stars will thank us for embarking on the Megasync mega project. I believe Maplesync, or something like it, will be one of the bases of their interstellar civilization. But more importantly, now, the Earth and the people who currently have no voice will thank us too, once we simply figure out how to bring us all around the digital fire. What's behind the name of Maplesync? Well, it brings the seed of an idea which was Project Cybersyn, more on that below, in 1970s Chile, into the 21st century context. Maples, plural, refer to the maple tree, Canada's icon, while sync refers to synchronization in both French and English, our two national languages. Cinq is also a near homonym to the French word for the number 5, which refers to the late cyberneticist Stafford Beer's 5 layers of the viable systems model. 1.3, a note on theory, introducing the CH and GCEHN triangulative coordinates for economics. I would like to introduce what I understand is a novel intellectual contribution to the field of political economy and economics. I'm calling the new subtrends discipline Economic Systems Design, or ESD, that allows the infinite intellectual flexibility to produce this new concept, cybernetic political economy. First, recall my definition of ESD from the introduction. The study and practice of how markets interact and how information flows through a political economy. Thus, we have the Coase, Hayek, and GCH barycentric coordinate system of economic systems design. The formal definition is the balance of which economic coordination in an economy is decentralized, free markets, centralized, command planning, or distributed, P2B, or a free association of producers. So imagine a triangle with those three things at each of the corners. Tags, fractal, emergence, recursion, complex adaptive systems, Mobius, and evolution, as well as computation. Question: where do you think Canada or any economy sits on the framework available in the document? I've named this crystallization for 20th century economist Ronald Coase, who wrote about the theory of the firm and transaction costs, and Friedrich von Hayek, who wrote The Use of Knowledge in Society on Planning versus Free Markets. This coordinate system, inspired by the Gini coefficient on inequality, allows us to conceptualize the information processing mix of an economy, with Murawski's Markomata. I make the assumption that the economies are like emergent computers. I add my initials as I believe this is an original concept in at least the application I am talking about. As far as I can see, this framework is applicable to any possible conceivable scale of an economy. It can be used descriptively and prescriptively, in other words, to explain existing cases of economies and to generate local optima or possible models of completely new ones. The coordinate works on a scale with 1 as the most extreme possible value for each ideal network type. These are the three types. A, an economy is perfectly decentralized, capitalist and corporate, and with individuals and firms competing with each other in totally free markets to determine economic allocation and coordination, i.e. a balance of Walmarts and independent plumbers collectively in competition. B, economy is perfectly centralized, authoritarian planned and managed, and with a quantum supercomputer as the only unit of the firm, which computes an imperative micro, meso, and macroeconomic plan to determine economic allocation and coordination, i.e. humans relinquish economic processing to a central computer which gathers data about all needs and develops a calculus to fulfill them, i.e. total cooperation. And C, an economy is perfectly decentralized, anarchic self-organizing, and with individuals as units of the firm, free association with each other to determine economic allocation and coordination, i.e. no governments or Walmarts, only a massive market of millions of interconnected subcontractors balancing competition, and cooperation. This is a relative scale, and we could begin to place nations in relation to each other along the scale. What will be interesting to compare is the United States to China. While China is by definition considered more planned than the U.S., the U.S. does indeed have a massive military-industrial complex and huge corporations which contribute a great deal to running the show. P2P would be interesting to look at as well. Therefore, on this scale, they might be more similar than initially thought. The theory of change for Maplesync is about finding a local optima of balance between these extremes for the efficient and effective functioning of an economy's pathway to prosperity. Maplesync is an opportunity to seek out this optimal mix for Canada as a nation, but it also may be applied to local, regional, provincial, state, continental, and global contexts. It is important to note that there is no global optima. As you may have gathered, this project rests on the assumption that markets can be designed. Fortunately, this is the conclusion of numerous recent winners of the Nobel Prize in Economics. We will expand this concept in a forthcoming academic paper, but I will go through some of the implications in this section. As an example from Wikipedia, network science tools can be used to analyze the plurality, diversity, and ubiquity of economic systems, such as a ring, a mesh, a star, a fully connected, a line, a tree, and a bus. The question is, what exactly does the center point, identified in the diagram, look like in practice as a theoretically optimal economic systems design? How might this tool be used creatively, and how might this be used analytically? 1.4, a metaphor, building the thinking fast and slow economy of the future. Imagine you had to pick up some groceries and milk at your local corner store. In terms of your thinking, there are two ways to get you there and to get the groceries you need. System 1 is the automatic, fast and thinking brain. It will control your ability to walk and intuitively navigate your way to the store and to intuitively identify connections between what you perceive and what you want. It will get you there, but you may become distracted. You may get lost and take a longer route, or you may let your hunger get the better of you and spend your money on candy you don't need. You might even go and forget to buy the very milk you came for. That's where System 2 comes in. This is your deliberate, slow-thinking brain. This helps you think ahead, deliberate, and plan choices, to make a list of what you need, to draw out a faster route, and to stay focused on the mission. However, over-reliance on System 2 can also unexpectedly slow things down. One might also miss the opportunity to try something new, something that the emotion of System 1 can catalyze. The lesson that we need is that we need both System 1 and System 2, both process information differently. Indeed, we need a balance of both. While this framework was developed by Dr. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist in terms of human cognition, I believe that it can be applied to another system, the economy. System 1 can be thought of as markets, and System 2 can be thought of as planning. For the same reason that humans need a balance of both for what we have achieved as a species, the future will require our economic systems to have a balance of both to ensure our continuing prosperity and survival, as well as that of everything we share the earth with. As economist Friedrich von Hayek said, the central tenet and caveat to all this is that both systems work best to support liberty and prosperity when they operate freely and democratically in terms of information flow, though his conclusion was that the market was the only way to go. This has been one of the central questions in economics since at least the 1920s, but given the economic upheaval in the world today, I believe that we must revisit the answer. The Maplesync endeavor sets out to catalyze a plurality of experiments in finding the local optima between markets and planning around the world. And it will start in Canada as Project Maplesync to Project Maplesync Alpha, perhaps, to supercharge and revolutionize the Canadian economy for prosperity, equity, and ecological flourishing. (1.5) Project Maplesync Overview Towards a Smart and Caring Nation. What is Project Maplesync? A democratic and inclusive indicative strategic planning platform, or DISP, driven by real-time big data and collective intelligence, featuring quadratic voting, open innovation, and wikis, a participatory economic information nervous system. It is one part Wikipedia, a knowledge platform, one part Reddit, a content ranking platform, and one part Linux, an operating system or OS platform, but combined to be a distributed economic decision-making platform. Why Maplesync? To supercharge and revolutionize the Canadian economy for prosperity, equity, and ecological flourishing by fully leveraging the collective intelligence of markets and planning. How will we build Maplesync? By confederating a platform of existing and emerging systems and resources, a system of systems fueled by the participation of Canadian citizens and the collaborators from around the world, taking inspiration from e-Estonia. It will be inspired by the economic futures and pluralist theory Purple Plenty movement, and will source and use as much existing infrastructure as possible. Who will build Maplesync? Regular people, experts, social entrepreneurs, and social technologists supporting themselves, their communities, and their country, as well as the decision-making capabilities of entrepreneurs, nonprofits, business, and governments, to be sorted in stages of creation versus input versus democratic participation. When will we build Maplesync? Well, starting now, for economic recovery so that we can come out of COVID-19 with the informational foundations for economic transformation. And where will we build Maplesync? eCanada, built open source to be replicated, forked, and remixed around the world. 1.6 Everything is a remix. e-Estonia, Project Cybersyn, and quadratic voting. What key precedents might we copy, build on, and diverge from? What could anchor the concept of Maplesync? I have three main ideas in mind. All descriptions are abridged from Wikipedia. e-Estonia. e-Estonia refers to a movement by the government of Estonia, to a small Baltic country, to facilitate citizen interactions with the state through the use of electronic solutions. E-services created under this initiative include iVoting, e-tax board, e-business, e-banking, e-ticket, e-school, university via internet, the e-governance academy, as well as the release of several mobile applications. 2. Project Cybersyn. It was a Chilean project from 1971 to 1973 aimed at constructing a distributed decisions support system in aid of the management of the national economy. The project consisted of 4 modules: an economic simulator, a custom software to check factory performance, an operations room, and a national network of telex machines that were linked to one mainframe computer. And finally, quadratic voting. It is a collective decision-making procedure where individuals allocate votes to express the degree of their preferences rather than just the direction of their preferences. By doing so, quadratic voting helps enable users to address issues of voting fraud paradox and majority rule. How would you mash these three concepts up? What weight would you give each? What would you add? What would you take away? 1.7 FAQ, or frequently asked questions. What problems does Maplesync precisely address, and how do we know it will solve it? This project holds at its core that solving the economic calculation problem, or ECP, is critical for understanding how an economy functions and how it can function more effectively. It is a blend of what I call an aspiration towards purple plenty, an optimal mixture of capitalist and socialist tools. This embraces a dichotomy and Januszian thinking. The specific material problem is that of economic growth considering the parameters of planetary and social limits. Kate Raworth's Donut Economics. What does someone go to Maplesync for? Why do we attend the things to which we attend? James Ten Brook, professor of Canadian political economist Harold Ames, circa 1913. People will use Maplesync systems to express their economic interests, their wants, needs, and visions in a manner that bypasses the limited informational capabilities of the market and price system. In other words, it allows them to express and seek fulfillment of their needs through signaling collective attention. Maplesync will ideally thoughtfully aggregate the signaling through collective attention to spur action. For skeptics, this question demands an analogy. Why do we vote? There isn't a clear line on what still motivates people to vote in a democracy, but we still do it. I personally believe that the reason why voter apathy has trended upwards in the last 30 years of Canadian federal elections, despite the increased levels of education, is because of the increasing complexity of Canada's economic, social, and political system. The user interface of elections in Canada is not broken, but it is unwieldy. Maplesync, through an emphasis on design, data visualization, community, fun, and user experience, seeks to cut through the complexity that I believe hampers participation. 3. What is going to pull people in to build, contribute, and participate? This is the basic premise of a story that illustrates the latent need for Maplesync or something like it. Imagine a community that needs something, i.e. access to fresh groceries. I want to create a low barrier of entry for communicating and drawing attention to these issues at the national level that is effective and efficient. Such a tool is like a semantic pointer. It has the potential of creating incentives to fulfill that need and allocate resources to ameliorate the issue. Therefore, Maplesync is a soft-powered tool of quiet leadership that acts parallel to existing systems in order to expedite action through social attention economics. This has been done before with things like change.org, but this, as you will see, is more in-depth than what the alternatives are. 4. What is the project's theory of change from the current status quo? I believe that the technical or operational aspect of this project is the easiest. The technical complexity is not an issue. In terms of scale, these types of systems and even systems of systems already exist. The challenge is the social. It's about getting the first programmer excited and motivated to build the first piece of software, getting the first 10 people on the basis of the platform to input their ideas and research, and then getting the first 100 people to vote on the alternatives of the nucleus proposed. Once one tangible decision is articulated and promoted by this platform, in other words, getting that fresh and attainable grocery store built in the right place for the people who need it, the project will prove QED, or quod erat demonstrandum, its own relevance and worth. Even if it doesn't immediately pay off, that first strategic decision will be an essential basis for Maplesync to serve the massive need it was designed to fulfill. 5. Will this be truly inclusive, or is this strictly for the knowledge workers? From a design perspective, inclusivity, whether it be of mothers at home or blue-collar workers to participate, to people with disabilities, is a core concern of the Maplesync project. In addition, Maplesync emphasizes the idea of a universal basic income and the 4-day work week in Canada for all people. This is to help create the opportunity for dedicated common time for democratic participation, volunteerism, passions, and entrepreneurship, including Maplesync as an economic platform, but of course the larger society and culture. 6. What kinds of unintended consequences or perverse incentives such as moral hazard might this cause? This is a key subject of concern, and at present concerns will be identified to both solve and experiment solutions with by sharing this document and getting feedback. At a fundamental level, adding a new level of democratic participation in large-scale economic decision-making, beyond the personal, for a large diversity of people is an experiment. Research suggests and intentionality directs that it will be hopefully cause a positive transformation of our economy towards increased sustainable growth, prosperity, and flourishing for all. There are a lot of issues that arise when attempting something like this on the internet, but I believe it is possible to approach these problems by using collective intelligence in design and co-design. 7. How would combinations of systems forming Maplesync integrate to achieve this goal? As a confederacy of systems, it is essential that all these pieces not only interrelate, but are cross-compatible, interoperable, and communicate with each other. An initial focus and mission towards the production of strategic plans will help guide this system-building effort. The system should be recursive and deliver information not only in real time, but at the right time, guided by the key idea of information integration and simplification. This, as a heuristic design guide, could help to make sense of the system and economic conditions. The efficient and effective flow of information is essential for the success of the project and is a key area for soliciting feedback. Fortunately, there are many models and precedents to look for in terms of the business world and the cybersyn project of the 1970s Chile. 8. Why would people want to work on this? Maplesync is a collaborative, rhetorical super project, a moonshot, or perhaps even a loon shot, that holds the opportunity to experiment locally for global implications. The vision is for it to become one of the most bold and audacious social technological projects of the decade ahead. I hope that diverse participation and co-design will follow. In more realistic terms, co-creation and participation could be seen with the precedent of the success of Wikipedia or Linux, with the general participation as the unprecedented opportunity to affect one's community's economic futures. And 9. How will democracy work in Maplesync? Besides contributing content and dialogue, how will people vote? What will be the age of majority? I am currently considering combining the following 4 concepts. Text from Wikipedia. 1. Quadratic voting, a collective decision-making procedure where individuals allocate votes to express the degree of their preferences rather than just the direction of their preferences. 2. Blockchain, or a similar solution, a growing list of records called blocks that are linked using cryptography. 3. Peer-to-peer, a computing or networking distributed application architecture that partitions tasks or workloads among peers. And 4. Liquid democracy, a form of delegative democracy whereby an electorate has the option of vesting voting power in delegates as well as voting directly themselves. To summarize the anticipated cone of possibilities of combining these concepts, I will describe this in summary how voting may work. 1. Basically, participants will hold an equal number of votes, i.e. 150, and will be able to assign them quadratically to as many choices as they wish. 2. A blockchain will record anonymized voluntary demographic data attributed to each vote. A key piece of data will be whether the voter is a citizen, a permanent resident, a visa holder, or a global contributor. 3. The results of the votes will be transparent and available, and computing of the system will ideally be done across a network of computers and a representative social network community. 4. Voting can be delegated, in part or in whole, by a participant to another participant, and so on, and revoked at any time. Note the results of voting are non-binding by being purely indicative. The knowledge integration embodied by the aggregated decision voting process exists to provide decision support and attention investment. Maplesync is a parallel or fourth sector innovation platform, not a replacement for governments, corporations, banks, or nonprofits. It's simply to augment them. A government or corporation, for instance, will not be bound to act based on the results of Maplesync voting. However, it is conceivable that a government could use the Maplesync kernel in order to develop their own Maplesync integrated in their political and bureaucratic processes. They could also use this to identify the delta between their decisions and the decisions of the people. Estonia has already created the framework of how to offer security and a basis for online citizenship, and is a model that should be copied with gratuitous attribution. It follows that, to me, given this framework, that comprehensive inclusion is possible and necessary to support information integrity of the outputs of a Maplesync confederacy. Therefore, the age of majority should be comprehensive. However, blockchain would note children's votes so they could be recorded but disaggregated from the conventional age of majority. I am a believer that children's preferences, beliefs, choices, and knowledge are still essential to understand for a functional economy. Tools and user interfaces should be created to provide an educational user experience for children, and of course, other methods may be used to represent children. For instance, allowing them to hold school or class community legislative bodies where voting is done on the scale of a classroom. This is an area of curiosity and importance, and is imperative to be explored more. I would like to conclude this section by making it known that I am well aware of the issues of bias and abuse through the design of algorithms. This is a core issue to be resolved intersubjectively of the project. Balancing the collective intelligence design humors of democracies, algorithms, markets, hierarchies, and communities, I believe, will lead us to an elegant range of solutions to these problems. I believe when convened, a group of diverse people, much smarter than me, will be able to reconcile this difficult and important problem. One of the things which is not been addressed here is cryptography and cybersecurity, which is an essential area as well. Section 2. Socio-Technical Specifications. Theory without practice is empty. Practice without theory is blind. Immanuel Kant, 18th century philosopher. How might we co-create the missing link between theory, practice, and participation in economics for the benefit of the common good? How might we catalyze the generation of alternatives to this prompt? What does the back end look like of the remix of the invisible hand of each according to their ability, to each according to their need? Mashed up quotes by Adam Smith and Karl Marx, political economists from the 1700s and 1800s, mentioning emergence, but with transparent machinery towards the efficient and effective allocation of wealth. Basic Game Plan 2.1. This is a massive change initiative and a mega project. The long-term goal is indeed to build it out as extensively as possible. However, the immediate action is not to attempt to build it, but to envision how it could be built and what impact it would have in order to inspire people to the cause. This order of operations will catalyze the will to build it. This is a Linux/Wikipedia inspired type project. For 2020, the goal is to develop a collaborative foresight/speculative economic futures project to envision the system. This will be called the Purple Plenty Movement. Purple is a blend of red and blue, or left and right, economic ideology. This proto-project will identify weak signals on the horizon and trends that would form a comprehensive view of the Maplesync system in 2025, or 5 years after an imagined launch during the COVID-19 global crisis. The output will likely be as simple as the imagined artifacts from the future. For instance, an op-ed dated 2025 published in a major Canadian news media outlet relaying the fictional story of the project and its impacts, both positive and negative. This output will ideally contribute to inspiring the movement to build Maplesync or some things like it. Crystallizing the imagination will be key. Cybersyn reimagined. 2.2. Proposed guiding values and principles. This section will be expanded upon in further documents. The first guiding ones are human rights, especially related to this project, such as a universal basic minimum income and a universal high-speed internet access. In terms of values, you have Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, pluralism, transparency, reconciliation, accessibility and user experience, inclusivity, fairness and equity, collective intelligence, open source, co-opetition, blending cooperation with competition, respect for both the periphery and core, modularity and plug and play, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and meeting people where they are. Principles, developed based on the work of Dr. Mariana Mazzucato of UCL, are themed in terms of past to future. Fixing markets towards co-creating and shaping, de-risking now towards welcoming uncertainty, leveling the playing field now towards tilting towards direction, picking winners now towards picking the willing, outsourcing towards capacity building, and cost benefit towards dynamic spillovers. 2.4. The Maplesync Confederacy of Systems explained as a Twitter thread. In other words, in plain language, 140 characters or less summaries of the parts of Maplesync and their functions. So Maplesync overall is Canada's collaborative economic strategic plans, a digital democratic platform for enhancing economic growth, sustainability, and equity. MapleStride, a component of Maplesync, is a big data and collective intelligence software foundation, tools that help participants rapidly and easily understand and make sense of economic conditions. Again, these are components that I'm talking about now. Now, MaplesNet is connecting the periphery and core and vice versa through social networking, tools that help coordinate and support collaboration and dialogue between participants. OpsFire is the main minimum viable product, which is a collective intelligence-driven planning and decision-making inclusive user interface. Tools that make large-scale economic decision-making open and accessible to all. CanX Sims, or Canadian Economic Simulators, will anticipate and wind tunnel the impact of decisions. There are tools to wind tunnel or test Maplesync co-developed ideas before implementation. Maples Edu is an integrative accessibility, and a fair, inclusive, representative participation to ensure that through education. So it's tools to make building, contributing, and voting on Maplesync accessible and inclusive by creating pathways for participation for people from all walks of life. Meta Maple Site is the meta governance, iterative design, and improvement of, as well as visioning of the platform. It's tools that build tools that build, rebuild, and secure a future-proof Maplesync. And Maplesync Fund is a community bank or foundation to fund Maplesync projects. Tools to sustain the Maplesync experiment and its basic operations forever. Finally, is the final component of Maplesync is a Maplesync Party, a form of augmented democracy. These are tools to collaboratively introduce policy based on Maplesync outcomes. Overall, this all fits into the umbrella of the Purple Plenty movement, an umbrella organization to encourage reproducibility of Maplesync around the world. It is an effort to accessibly and inclusively spread the evolving ideas behind Maplesync and to provide support to projects for locally implementing the Maplesync kernel in other contexts. 2.5, Maplesync Information Flow Systemigram. This refers to the first iteration of the project, the proposed Maplesync Alpha. Please see the document for this diagram. 2.6, detailed categories of systems that can be included on the Maplesync system. This is a section that goes over the past section about the description of the components of Maplesync in greater detail and is easiest to go through on the document itself. And 2.7, elevator pitches for the 12 proposed specific systems that are listed under the Maplesync system. 2.7, elevator pitches for the 12 proposed specific systems or modules. 1. The Open Strategic Plan as part of OpsFire. Visualized in the diagrams in section 2.8, forthcoming, this is an iterative process of identifying opportunities to grow and optimize Canada's economy. These plans are parallel to governments and firms and are indicative, meaning that obviously it is non-binding. However, they can be utilized by enterprises and governments to guide their decision-making. The ideal is that it brings our actions in line with the desires of the country. There will likely not be one strategic plan produced by each period or for each period, but instead a variety of options that can be used individually or voted on to aggregate. 2. Aggregate Strategic Plan, OpsFire. This sub-project involves aggregating all of the strategic plans across the enterprise, non-profit, and government sectors across the country that are already being produced. We will use collective intelligence and computation to overlap all plans to develop a bottom-up understanding of where the country intends to be headed. By doing this, we will be able to see areas of commonality, but more importantly, develop an understanding of blind spots and missed opportunities. Strategic plan input will obviously be voluntary, but with anonymization if preferred, all in order to create a data-rich market. 3. Open shadow budget as part of OpsFire. Just as think tanks and core political parties produce shadow or parallel imagined budgets to offer an alternative to the governing party, Maplesync will offer an opportunity for people to do the exact same. The idea is not to command what the actual budget will be, but to understand the delta or difference between the people's plan, if ideally we can get that scalable representation, and the representative government's plan. The intention is for a dialogue to happen after the shadow budgeting process in order to reconcile the two plans where possible. And 4. The Entrepreneurial Roadmap under OpsFire. Building on Harvard/MIT's Atlas of Economic Complexity, this big data tool, iterated on by the collective intelligence of the platform, will help to identify pathways to prosperity for entrepreneurs by identifying export and import replacement opportunities to develop unexpected but big data-backed Canadian products and services. It may be possible to develop a more granular version of the tool that maps out global SKUs or barcodes in order to remix existing products and find gaps between them. It will act as a sort of treasure map for entrepreneurial opportunities. 5. The CanX Sims Challenge under CanX Sims, or Canadian Economic Simulations. This will be a funded global challenge for participants from around the world to develop accurate computer simulations of Canadian economies. The construction and use of these models will be to wind tunnel or experiment and test the ideas that come out of Maplesync initiatives in order to understand their consequences better and to make better decisions about what to pursue, the alternatives. 6. Value Flow Model under CanX Sims. The purpose of this is to develop a comprehensive accounting system of the actual physical throughput of our economy. What is meant by this is understanding the material flows of resources, their recipes to create commodities and products, and so forth. It If we can model and map how resources are processed, we will be able to identify where suboptimal wastages occur at the scale of the national economy system. This will help to guide policy, but more importantly, guide entrepreneurs to opportunities that might help optimize or reinvent the entire economy. This system will likely use a resource event agent or REA accounting, and also could be thought of as a treasure map with sponsored bounties. 7. Data can, or under MapleStride. Participants in Maplesync must have excellent access to information in order to make informed decisions and other inputs using these tools. Therefore, the information must be easily comprehensible through the user experience design, or UX. DataCan will build off Data USA to represent Statistics Canada and other data sources in a sophisticated but understandable way. 8. The Price is Wrong, or MapleStride. This is a tool based on my undergraduate thesis in the Department of Knowledge Integration at the University of Waterloo. The idea here is to create a game like The Price is Right, but for externalities. We will crowdsource the impact of externalities and create, as well as debate, indicative plans on how to encourage the adjustment of prices. Startup Lunch Timing Prediction Market under MapleStride. This will be a prediction market that will allow startups to consult the crowd in order to gain input of when they think would be a suitable time for a startup to launch. It is theorized that market entry timing is one of the key indicators of a startup's success. Prediction markets are quite accurate with regards to identifying occurrences of the future. Therefore, we can help to optimize entrepreneurship by gathering unexpected knowledge from across the Maplesync Confederacy. 10. Open Consulting under MapleStride. The idea behind this is to allow for small and medium-sized businesses, or enterprises, SMEs, across Canada to post their business model canvases to a wiki in order for them to be scrutinized for optimizations and new ideas by the contributors and participants to Maplesync. It will offer an unprecedented, open opportunity for SMEs to have consulting services, albeit open to innovation consulting services, in order to grow their businesses. Anonymization will be an option. Imagine if a group of students from Truro, Nova Scotia could help improve the prosperity of a business in Nanaimo, BC. 11. The Open Economic Development, MapleStride. This was inspired by the massive unemployment of highly skilled engineers and technicians in Alberta following the oil crash of the mid-2010s, and makes a current assumption that universal basic minimum income is inevitable. How might we create a pathway for participation for highly skilled but underemployed or unemployed individuals to contribute to economic growth and economic development, both in Calgary and around the world, and be compensated for it if they wish, and participate in this if they wish? This idea takes inspiration from the Global Village construction set and proposes that we pursue a variant of that project using Canadian and global ingenuity. More specifically at home, this can be used to help create an economic development plans for regions, bands, and municipalities in Canada that leverage pan-Canadian knowledge and know-how. And finally, number 12, serendipitous networking under MaplesNet. Building on the insights of other established random networking tools on the internet, Maplesync will require a tool for team formation to generate unexpected new ideas. Serendipitous encounters through apps like Shaper and Spark Collaboration could help with this effort. 2.8 Preliminary Envisioned OpsFire, or Collaborative Strategic Plan Process System Diagram. This is best viewed on a computer. I recommend to view it there, but the following diagrams demonstrate how a democratic process might flow online at a massive scale. Detailed JPEGs are available, as well as a Miro board. Essentially, the cycle is a double diamond of divergence and convergence. The first diamond is for developing a creative host of solutions for the problems and vision of Canada's economy. The second is to develop those solutions into a cohesive family or suite of plans. These plans would then inform, ideally, a mission-driven, economy-wide projects. The consequences of these actions then flow back to the beginning of the next planning cycle. Only variety can absorb variety. Ashby's law of requisite variety. Ross Ashby, an English cyberneticist and physics psychiatrist. So these diagrams are double diamond. They give first an overview as well as a first diamond detail of the dual track generative versus analytical techniques. A second diamond of dual track expert versus non-expert review, and a mission system diagram converting the indicative goals into a social incentive network. Section 3, Next Steps. From the tiny Samaras, the mighty maples doth grow. 3.1, Invitation to participate. Feedback is welcome. More avenues to discuss this are created and they are available in the social menu on the website. Feedback is especially desired on organizing, on phasing in, on promoting media and performance art, on strategy and legal structure, on economic, strategic planning, accountancy ideas for tools and their function, and foresight, and much, much more. Really, anything about this project, we'd love to hear feedback. That's section 3.1. 3.2 is forthcoming sections and critical questions. There's a lot of work there's a lot to work on to build out the Maplesync idea. I've listed some of these that are top of mind below in no particular order. So a systemigram situating Maplesync in larger systems. What are the paradigms and assumptions behind Maplesync and Purple Plenty? A causal layered analysis, a glossary of terms, a reflection on garbage in, garbage out, a theory of change with tags, fourth sector, redundancy, membrane, organic pressure, an appendix, and creating a network map of a whole bunch of questions, such as what is the minimum viable project? What are the boundaries of the project? What is this project not? How might we decolonize Maplesync? What precedent or meta study precedent? What are the differences in demographic usership between existing social media and open source projects like Wikipedia and Linux? What does social adoption look like? How might we minimize the amount of work of creators versus contributors versus participators, and how they can all have meaningful impact, and what are the scales of participation? And finally, we need a kind of a nuclear waste warning, a posterity disclaimer section from a cross-reference, pluralistic open call of elders and philosopher inputs to really contextualize Maplesync in its moment, to make sure the algorithms and everything like that are as unbiased as possible. 3.3, conclusion. Imagine Maplesync user reviews from 2025, a glimpse of flourishing. So the first is a quote. These are all quotes from Imagine users in 2025. The first one is, voting and contributing ideas to Maplesync initiatives has been one of the most fulfilling parts of my retirement. I feel inspired and included that I have the chance to contribute to Canada's vision and goals. Vashti Singh, a retiree in Sudbury, Ontario. 2. The Maplesync project is a chance for us young people to have our voices meaningfully heard. Leonard Brown, a university student in Victoria, British Columbia. 3. Maplesync has allowed our territory to have better representation in the national imagination, and for that I'm grateful. But most immediately useful are the teaching tools for my classroom, inspiring the next generation to think in systems with foresight and to think big. Suzanne Arak, a teacher in Rankin Inland, Nunavut. And 4. The reports and data produced by Maplesync have been useful to my business. I hope I hope what I contributed back in return will be useful for others. Félix Gagnon, a small business owner in Trois-Rivières, Quebec. And finally, by contributing my technical expertise has been a fulfilling hobby and a joy to share my interpretation of my nation's perspective to the people of Canada in service of other nations in the world too. Mongane, a Maplesync open source developer in Durban, South Africa. 3.4, Epilogue. In this spirit, I share the wish that Nobel Prize in Economics for Market Design recipient Dr. Roger Myerson, University of Chicago, expressed in his 2007 Hurwitz lecture. Of course, the late 20th century provided much evidence of capitalist economic success and socialist economic failure, but a theorist should not give up on a good question simply because there seems to be evidence to answer it empirically. If our theories do not give an adequate answer, then we must continue working to develop theories that can, because one can always propose new institutional structures that do not exactly match those for which we have data. If we have no general theory about why socialism should fail, then we have no way to say that greater success could not be achieved by some new kind of socialism that is different from the socialist systems that have been tried in the past. So the mantra to work by is, nobody is going to participate in your damn planning councils. And that must be taken into account. A picture is given of the Economic Complexity Network map of Canada's economy, 2017 of the Harvard-MIT Atlas for Economic Complexity. Process makes perfect. Vive le Canadien. The final quotes. In the long run, as journalist Robert Wright says, there is a direction, an arrow in human history in which technologies arise that enable new, richer forms of non-zero-sum interaction. That is, interactions in which all participants are better off from having interacted. Dr. Thomas W. Malone, MIT Center for Collective Intelligence, in his 2018 book, Superminds. Finally, new frontiers of the mind are before us, and if they are pioneered with the same vision, boldness, and drive with which we have waged this war, we can create a fuller and more fruitful employment and a fuller and more fruitful life. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1944, the inspiration for the Vannevar Bush Report, Science, the Endless Frontier. Section 4 is foundational sources. To succeed, planning alone is insufficient. One must improvise as well. Isaac Asimov, Foundation, 1951. 4.1 is existing tools that an inspiration to source for a system of systems, an emphasis on practice. So these are basically a list of all these things that already exist that could be conceptually or fully implemented in terms of building a system of systems, building Maplesync out. A lot of the stuff for Maplesync doesn't need to be built from scratch. It just needs to be integrated properly. So there's a list of organizations, projects, and ideas that could be pulled together. A list from my research over the years. 4.2 is a few entries in a preliminary bibliography with an emphasis on theory. So the themes of this are overall is like Science, the Endless Frontier, the report to the President by Vannevar Bush, Director of the Office for Scientific Research and Development from 1945, from the federal government as a kind of general thing, but we have a section on economic calculation problem, the collective intelligence, cybernetics, information, and economic complexity, value, missions, science, math, history, and futures, heterodox economics, values, innovation, and pedagogy, the internet, computing, design, and artificial intelligence. So there's a whole bunch of sections in there with a lot to read. Finally, a section is a bio of the co-founding author, Jeffrey C. Ebony Hill, that's me. Jeff is a proud Calgarian from Alberta, living in Toronto, Ontario, with his girlfriend whilst completing his Master of Design in Strategic Foresight and Innovation, SFI, at Ontario College of Art and Design University, or OCADU. He graduated, I graduated, this is kind of awkward tense-wise, but I'm going to read it as is. He graduated from the University of Waterloo, UW, in Ontario, with a Bachelor of Knowledge Integration in 2015 with minors in Cognitive Science and Philosophy. Jeff also attended Alberta College of Art and Design in 2012, ACAD, or now AU Arts, where he held his first solo art exhibition, Never Events, the Future of the Past. Jeff was valedictorian of the 2010 graduating class of Strathcona Tweedsmuir School in Okotoks, Alberta, where he completed his independent final art project, Expo Calgary 2164. Jeff became interested in economics early in university, but disliked the way it was taught. This led him to a cognitive economics or behavioral economics seminar offered at UW. That catalyzed a journey of discovery and involvement in the global student movement, Rethinking Economics. Jeff co-founded Rethinking Economics Waterloo in 2014 and co-organized the first Rethinking Economics conference in Canada, held in February 2015 at the University of Waterloo, St. Paul's University College. Concurrently, he wrote his undergraduate thesis, Exploring Prices in Information Technology, with supervisor Dr. Patricia Marino, and founded the CANU Joint Canadian Undergraduate Program System, which is still under construction. Jeff put this thinking on hiatus, this economic thinking on hiatus, until an essay question in a human factors class at SFI and a serendipitous conversation with his classmate reinvigorated his interest in the topic. He rapidly developed the nucleus of what was then called the Purple Plenty Project, and developed the idea through conversations, reading, games, and convening with a collective intelligence reading group in Toronto he started with his friends. He hacked together the basis of this document in an inspired sprint of 8 days. Jeff looks forward to the next steps of collaboration with this project and is available to be contacted by email. Thank you very much for listening to this. I left a little Easter egg in the document that you can look at. It's a diagram of how we might live within our boundaries, within the triangle of markets. I look forward to receiving feedback and starting a conversation about this over the next number of years. This is a big project, and I thank you very much for listening all the way through. Thank you, and good luck.